I have two sons, Carl, 38, and Jacob, 36. Jacob got married when he was 18. He asked me to pay for his wedding, but I refused. My reasons were, he was too young to marry, I disapproved of his fiancée. He'd been with this girl for only 1 year, which in my mind is not long enough. He didn't have enough money, so they had to elope. 1 year later, they had their first child, a boy, and a year after that, they had their second child, a girl, Jade. They decided they couldn't handle 2 kids and told us they would give her up for adoption. I was angry at them because I'd warned him about it. I told him they were too young to have a kid, let alone 2 kids, but they didn't listen to me. So finally I convinced him to let me and her mother adopt Jade, and he agreed. We went to another city and Carl came with us as well. For the past 16 years we were low contact with Jacob. Even though my wife and I adopted Jade, Carl was the one who raised her and he did an amazing job. Jade considers him her dad now. A year ago, Carl got engaged to his fiancée Maya. Maya is a fantastic woman. They were together for 5 years before getting engaged. She's like a mom to Jade and I consider her my daughter. A few weeks ago, we went back to the city where Jacob lives, as Jade, who had a tough time when she found out she was adopted, is doing better now and is ready to meet her aunt and uncle. Carl and Maya are getting married soon. To thank them for raising Jade and being such a fantastic parent to her, I told them I would pay all their wedding expenses. We were at Jacob's home a few days ago, and they asked Carl about his wedding. He told him I was paying for everything, and Jacob and his wife went mad. They told me it's not fair that I'm paying for his wedding when I made them elope. They said I'm showing favoritism. Jacob isn't talking to me now. He says he won't speak to me unless I make it up to him. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. What on earth? Why would anyone pay him back for that? Jacob and his wife are entitled idiots who are more focused on what they can get than the fact they abandoned their child. You were right that they were too young to get married and too young to have children. The outcome speaks for itself. You've technically made it up to Jacob by raising his daughter. Now that your other son is ready to be married under what normal people would consider favorable and sensible circumstances, I can see why you would support the marriage. Having said that, neither son is entitled to your support in the marriage costs. That is up to you to determine. In this case, I don't see any issues with your decision. The fact that you didn't say, I'll write you a check for the same cost of your brother's wedding if you write me one for the cost of raising your child, shows you are not an idiot. Disagree. Wow. Carl sure seems like a fantastic guy with how much you talk down about your other son. Jacob sure seems immature, what with his 18 years long marriage and ability to see that a life with him and his wife wouldn't be best for his child. This entire story feels like you're talking down about your child. No wonder he doesn't like talking to you. You seem to think that giving up his child was a spur-of-the-moment decision or something. So no, congratulations. You aren't an idiot for not giving him money, but you seem like a terrible favourite playing parent. Yes, you are the idiot here. You can't hold the fact that you adopted Jade over their heads forever. They didn't dump her on your doorstep and run off into a life of debauchery. They were young, felt they couldn't offer a good quality of life, and decided to put her up for adoption. Perhaps they thought they had no support, which can be daunting to people even at an older age. You're the one that convinced them to let you adopt her. Then you moved to another city and went low contact with your 20-year-old son and his family. You also failed to tell Jade about her birth parents and adoption, which in your own words caused her to have a very hard time. Did you always like Carl better? Or is it just because he hasn't done anything you disapprove of yet? It's clear who you like better, that's okay. But you can't be mad at Jacob for feeling slighted, particularly after successfully being married for 18 years after going through some pretty hard times with none of your support. It seems like Jacob wasn't completely devoid of sense when picking a partner. Our daughter got sick while on vacation with her dad a few months ago, and now, whenever she's upset, she wants a specific parent to comfort her, and it's impossible to get her to calm down if you're not the parent she wants. A few nights ago, she woke up at 2 a.m. after having a nightmare and wanted her dad. We're separated and don't live together, so I tried to calm her down myself first, but she was getting increasingly distressed. Eventually, I caved and called my ex to ask him if he could come over to comfort her. He came over and managed to get her back to sleep, but he didn't want to move in case he woke her up again because she was sleeping on him. He asked me to wake him up by 8 a.m. as he was supposed to be leaving for a vacation with his girlfriend a few hours later. I asked him not to go because I was worried our daughter would want him while he was away. After discussing it, he agreed not to. A few hours after he left, the girlfriend called me, upset. I had asked him to come over at 2 a.m. and because he cancelled their vacation at the last minute because of me. She told me I was acting like a jealous ex-wife and accused me of using our daughter to control my ex, which isn't true. Am I the idiot? You are the idiot. Appeasing her at all costs is only hurting your daughter. You're not doing what's best for her. You're soothing her because it's convenient. If you want to help her, you need to address this and help her work through it. Use a therapist if need be. Ridiculous to ask him to put everything on hold because you want to take the convenient way out instead of parenting her. Great that he came over at 2 a.m., especially when he's trying to leave the next day. He was a very supportive co-parent and loving dad. Why is that not enough for you? Your daughter will have to be weaned off this phase. If it occurs when he's not available, you'll have to deal with it. You know, like a parent yourself. You probably are jealous of the girlfriend. No way would a rational person ask this of someone. If you cared about and respected your ex and weren't jealous, you'd wake him in the morning and wish him a good trip. It might be difficult for the daughter to grasp that concept because the mother is jealous and obviously trying to sabotage the ex's new relationship. It wouldn't surprise me if the daughter consciously or subconsciously tries to pull a parent trap to get dad to stay with mom. To start this off, I'm going to give you some context as to what she did and why I don't pity her. I, 28 female, have a sister, Caitlin, who is 1 year older than me. Growing up, we were dirt poor. Our family nailed almost every single southern hillbilly stereotype on the head. We both did decently, but neither of us had ever considered college. Caitlin graduated high school first and got a full-time job immediately. She began to help with bills, but at some point began thinking about maybe going to school. I was having the same thoughts a year later when I graduated. Well, we hadn't known that when our great-grandma died, she left my dad all she had, which came up to a sum of a couple of $1,000s they decided to save for us. And because Caitlin began talking about maybe going to school, Mom began to save her bill money to add to the sum. But unfortunately, it still wasn't a lot, so our parents sat us down and explained that they had the money for only one of us to go to school and that they would have to think about who to give it to. I was prepared to fight for this chance because I realized this was my chance to better myself. I was ready to do whatever it took, but I didn't need to because Kate had given up. I guess Caitlin realized she wouldn't be picked because I had better grades and was more well-liked because Mom told me later that day that she'd backed down and said to give it to me. So, fast forward, I got my BSN and worked as a travel nurse. I do very well for myself and live 2 hours away from my hometown. I went to visit my sister because she's pregnant with my nephew and I missed her and brought some gifts. We had lunch and were chatting about what we were up to when she began to complain, whine that she was tired, and asked if I didn't mind if she vented. Before I could answer, she started talking about how she was tired all the time from her shifts at work and then having to come home to her kids and her husband. It sounded a lot like she was regretting her life, and after about 20 minutes, it was starting to get on my nerves. However, she wouldn't stop or change the topic. Finally, I lost it and told her that I wasn't here to listen to her complain and that she really shouldn't complain about the life she chose. I told Caitlin that if she didn't have to get married or have a low-paying job, and if she wanted to better herself, she should have fought harder to go to college, instead of giving up before she even tried. It ended in her crying, which I felt horrible about, and then she went home without saying anything else. I tried apologizing for phrasing it that way, but not for anything I said because it was true, but she won't accept it. Our parents have been giving me the cold shoulder, and I feel lost because they won't listen to my side of why I said what I said. Am I the idiot here? You are the idiot. I guess Caitlin realized she wouldn't be picked because I had better grades and was more well-liked. Or maybe she just loved her little sister and wanted you to have a real chance. But hey, congratulations on doing well in high school and being popular. Or, just as likely, OP's parents encouraged Caitlin to give up since Caitlin was the one helping with bills and they didn't want to lose that extra income. Either way, OP is an idiot because either she's so blind that she failed to see that her sister loved her to the point of wanting to give her a chance to make something of herself, or didn't realize her parents were selfish and forced Caitlin into a corner. Even without all that, looking down on her sister like she is still makes her an idiot. You can tell which sister was the golden child. And Caitlin contributed to that fund too and never benefited from it. So that was literally Caitlin's money too. I guess OP is so self-centered that she can't even realize that her sister gave up for her to have a better future. Just curious, does OP ever ask her why she did that? Or has she ever said thank you for giving her this opportunity? Massive idiot, you clearly stated that your sister got a job immediately and helped with bills. You guys grew up dirt poor and yet you don't have a single ounce of empathy for her situation. It's not a life she chose. People born in poverty get fewer chances. It's a fact. You got lucky and it turned you into an entitled idiot, which is pathetic. You were given a chance. She was not, so you have no excuse to have become a worse person, LOL. I, 34 male, am in a situation where I feel I'm right, but some family and friends feel I'm in the wrong. I genuinely don't think I'm in the wrong, so I'm looking for some unbiased opinions and answers. My wife Elizabeth died when my daughter, Davina Tween, was born, so I decided to name her the middle name of her mother in honor of her. My current wife, Natalie, 34, didn't know this up until 2 weeks ago when a cousin accidentally slipped it out. It's important to add that Natalie gets jealous of Elizabeth from time to time, because Davina knows Elizabeth was her real mom and has pictures of her to remind her. Also, Natalie and I are expecting, so now she's hung up on naming our daughter Natalie. I understand she's jealous, but I feel like she's only trying to one-up Elizabeth by doing this. I've already expressed my dislike for her doing this, but she brushes it off and says things like, "If you love me more than Elizabeth, you would let me have this." At dinner with my family last night, she revealed without my knowing that the baby's name would be Natalie. I could tell my family knew what she was trying to do and just sat there awkwardly. I didn't want to embarrass her by saying anything directly, but when we got home, I told her that I was putting my foot down and I refused to let her name our baby that. She called me cruel and pathetic for still loving Elizabeth even though she was dead. I honestly didn't know what to say and just left. I'm currently writing this at my parents' house and seriously contemplating divorce. Not the idiot. She's jealous of a dead woman and is actively trying to one-up your late wife and get you to prove you love her more. That is not healthy. This woman needs therapy immediately. Don't let your daughter be named out of spite. Not a great way to come into this world. What triggered me was his current wife saying, "If you love me more than your dead wife, you would do what I want." That is disgusting behavior. And I don't give a hang about hormones. I've been in the grips of raging hormones and been tempted to slap people with dead fish. I still had a brain to know that wasn't right, so I enjoy my thoughts secretly. I'm slightly concerned that her obsessive competition with your late wife will also play out in the unequal treatment of your daughters once Natalie's biological daughter is born. You're not crazy for considering divorce, and I would absolutely insist on couples counseling with your wife if you stay married. Being this competitive with a woman who's been dead for a decade is mad. Huge red flags throughout this post. If you're not going to do it for yourself because you deserve better, divorce her for your daughter, who likely feels that she has to hide her love for her deceased mom to spare your current wife's delusional feelings. I wonder how often his wife's deep insecurity has affected OP and his daughter. I'm sure this isn't the first time. It takes a very weak person to feel like they're living in the shadow of the dead parent. It's her mother, for God's sake. She should always be remembered and cherished and loved. My nephew is in 4th grade and asked me to do some math homework with him. I helped him solve the questions, and during some small talk I mentioned to him how, if we were honest, subtraction isn't really a thing and neither is division. I explained to him how subtraction is merely the addition of negative numbers. When he asked me about negative numbers, I explained how each positive number greater than 0 had a complementary negative number, basically mirrored around 0. So he wanted to know if there is 1, then there is a -1, and I said that's exactly it. And if you look for which number multiplied with itself gives you -1, then you get I. Then you get all the imaginary numbers. If you just multiply any positive or negative real number with I, you get 1. So he found that very interesting and wanted to know what they're used for. I don't know about that, but I do think they're very neat. A few days later, my brother asked me what I'd been talking with my nephew about because his teacher had called him to complain about him. He had claimed in class that subtraction wasn't real and they should be learning the truth about negative numbers. Then he'd asked when they'd finally move on to learning about imaginary numbers. My brother says it's my fault he's causing trouble in the class and claims I'm teaching him the wrong things. Also, he said he had never heard about such a thing as imaginary numbers and doubts they're real. Am I the idiot? You are the idiot. He's a kid and you're presenting whatever you presented to him. I hope no one asks you for help with homework again. You knew what he needed and made it complicated to make yourself seem smart. Now he's in trouble at school. Bravo! Your brother should negatively add you from his life. The kid's in 4th grade, for goodness sake. Did you also tell him Santa and the Tooth Fairy aren't real? Yes, you are the idiot for confusing the kid. He's learning basics, And you're running thought experiments that aren't constructively fostering his learning or growth. Your nephew is at an age where he needs to learn some basics to then get more complex math concepts. Also, you're being odd about the truth about subtraction, like there's a big conspiracy with negative numbers. You have messed up how he is taught because you think you know better. Yeah, I get the feeling OP is one of those people who needs to tell others how smart they are and give examples to prove that they're smarter than everyone else. Subtraction is real, OP. If you had X amount of days with your nephew and your brother subtracted X amount from that, you'd not see much of your nephew.